welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know it's been a while since I've last made a video, but I promise that I have really good reason as to why I've been away for so long. So a lot's happened in the last few months. I actually moved and I now live in Toronto on my own. And for the last few months, I've actually been busy working on a very exciting project. And as you can probably tell from my title or thumbnail, I am going to be releasing my very first art book. And that's what I've been working on for the past few months. I had alluded to it in my last video, which was the hour-long Q&A video. I think I mentioned it at the very end of the video, so I'm sure that this is news to a lot of people, especially if you don't follow me on Instagram. So yeah, I finally put together my very own art book, and it is called Tumble, and I am going to be launching a Kickstarter campaign to help fund this project, and it's coming out on Saturday, June 5th, so pretty soon. I hope you guys are as excited about it as I am. I feel like it's a really long time coming for me to make this art book, and I really would not have had the courage to make it without all of your support and encouragement over the years. So my upcoming art book is a collection of my work from 2016 to now in 2021. And it begins when I consciously made the decision to eventually leave the animation industry to become an independent artist. And so for today's video, I thought that because I'm making this announcement about my art book, that it would be nice to give you all a little bit more context as to how I arrived at the decision to leave the animation industry, to leave full-time employment, to pursue self-employment and to be an independent artist. So I will preface this video by saying that this is not really a call out video. I'm not calling out the animation industry per se. I personally have a pretty limited experience working in the animation industry, and so this is not a, animation industry is evil kind of video. It's just more, I'm just more speaking from my own experience and trying to explain why I came to the decision that I did to ultimately leave and become independent. So with all that said, let's get into the video. So my number one reason for wanting to leave the animation industry and pursue self-employment, work for myself, the number one determining factor for me was that I felt like I was wasting my talent. Now, I know how that sounds. That sounds really pretentious, but please hear me out. I just really don't know a better way to say that, but I really just felt like I was spending a lot of time doing something that wasn't ultimately adding to building up my skills, and so I felt like I was kind of wasting away. So in order for me to explain this point a little bit better, I have to give you a little bit more context into how I even decided to go into the animation industry. Some of you guys know that I went to animation school. And I had explained in my Q&A video, my last video, that I hadn't really thought through what working in the animation industry really entailed. I really based my decision of going to animation school on just that I heard through the grapevines that it was the school that people went to if they were good artists. And because I had deemed myself as a quote-unquote good artist as an arrogant high schooler, that was really the only option, going to animation school. I really was so narrow-minded and just so ignorant. I like animation. It's not like I don't like animation, but I hadn't really considered what it actually meant to work in animation. And so yeah, after graduating this 4-year animation program, I only had my sights on working at the top animation studios, because of course I was still, arrogant at this time, still very full of myself. And you know what, partially it's because I figured that working as like a visual development or concept artist in a studio like that, that's the only way to like draw and paint cool looking things. So in my head, those big companies were the only options that I could take in terms of employment. But eventually reality hit, and after having only applied to large companies like that, and being a Canadian, it is definitely harder to be considered for a job in the States, because there's like a large pool of talent in the States, and so why would anyone take a foreigner versus their own homegrown talent, right? So after a year of unemployment, after having graduated school, I decided to broaden my search a little bit and try applying to Canadian animation studios. Now, I was getting a little bit desperate at this point, because I was coming to the realization that maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. And my parents were getting a little bit antsy with me as well. I was living at home, and I felt like I needed to give them a little bit more reassurance. So long story short, I got into an animation studio here in Canada. I actually had to move across the country in order to take this job. And by that point, because it was more than a year out of school, I was pretty desperate to have a job. And so I decided to just take the leap and see what happens. And once I got there and I started the job, you start making money, and it was the most amount of money that I was making at the time, and so I was pretty content with that. I think I started at like $850 Canadian per week, being a layout artist. And the cost of living in Vancouver, if you know, is very, very high. But I had a roommate at the time, and for me, it was still like the most amount of money I've ever seen. So I was pretty content at the time, clocking in, clocking out, and getting that steady paycheck. But somewhere along the way, I stopped and just kind of reevaluated what I was doing, and I realized, like, wow, I could actually kind of get trapped in this cycle of just the 9 to 5 and then getting a steady paycheck and just being content with it. This is not really why I went into animation in the first place. I mean, maybe my reason for going into animation was flawed from the beginning, but I went into this thing because I love to draw and I love to paint. And I don't know what that looked like in terms of like my job description. I always thought I wanted to do visual development or be a character designer or do concept art or something like that, because to me those were the jobs in my mind where you actually got to draw and paint like figures and characters, which is what I'm into. Even though I was working in an art career, a quote-unquote art job, it just started to feel like I was wasting my time, while I could be spending that time to actually improve on my skills. I was using my skills, but I wasn't really progressing with it. I wasn't going anywhere with it. And to me, I started to really resent that. Drawing and painting characters, which is what I wanted to do, jobs like that are really hard to come by in animation, especially in the animation industry here in Canada, because we tend to get more of the production cycle of the animation pipeline, whereas all the cool stuff, all the pre-production stuff, which is what I wanted to do, that kind of stuff is harder to come by, and I feel like a lot of that is in the States. I could be wrong, but that's kind of the impression that I got back in, I don't know, 2014 to 2016, which is when I was actively in the animation industry. So I had considered other jobs, and I poked around here and there, but after a while, I just came to the conclusion that there isn't really a job in animation that I could see myself doing that would actually feel like I was utilizing my time in a productive way. Because even in visual development, let's say working for Disney or Pixar or a big video game studio, like you're going to be given certain parameters, right? Like you're not gonna have, it's gonna be pretty rare to have like complete blue sky, like anything goes, no holds barred, do whatever you want. Like it's gonna be pretty rare. And even if that is the case, I bet you there are not a lot of those jobs out there. And so one day I just had to be realistic with myself. It's going to be harder for me to find my perfect job than it is for me to just do my own thing and try to make money off of that. Because at least that way I will hopefully find more fulfillment in what I am doing. And the time that I spend would be actively put towards improving my skills, which is something that I could be then proud of, rather than spending hours and hours in Adobe Flash building parts for puppet animation, which is basically what I was doing as a posing artist. So yeah, basically, long story short, I really had to look at what it is I was doing with my time, and I just felt like that time was not being spent wisely, because if I was working on my own, then I would be doing and making things that I want to make. And by doing that, I would be simultaneously building and improving my skills in what I want to do. So to me, that just seemed like a better use of my time, as opposed to trying to find a fulfilling job in the animation industry. So the next biggest reason why I decided to leave in pursuit of self-employment was time. Time working in the animation industry. At least my specific job, it was completely all-consuming. Working in the animation industry, a lot of the times you are working on a quota, and so the hours didn't really matter. Like, basically, I had a certain amount of scenes that I had to finish by the deadline, and the hours were pretty arbitrary. But the company, I don't know if it's like industry standard, but the company that I was working for, they made you come in, clock in at 9 and then leave by 5. You had to be in the studio at your desk working at those hours, regardless of how quickly you finish your quota. And so it didn't matter if you worked really hard and really effectively and then met your quota days earlier. It didn't matter. You just had to be at work at those hours. And the worst thing is, even if you did finish your quota earlier, then once they get wind of that, they would actually put more work on you and take other people's scenes that they're behind on and then put them on your plate, which in theory, yeah, it is a team effort, and I guess that's in an ideal world like that, yes, that makes sense. But to me, that it's just a recipe for not using your time effectively, because no one wanted to take someone else's work that they're behind on, But going back to my point about time, my particular job, it was pretty grueling in terms of the amount of time that it took. It was often more work than we could handle, and I would often have to do overtime. And the overtime was unpaid, because again, the pay is based on quota, so it didn't matter how much time you spent. So I would often have to stay late, past 5 o'clock, to finish my scenes. And again, like, the appeal of the steady paycheck wears off, and you realize I am spending most of my day at my work. I am starting to live for the weekends, and there were some times when I would even have to come to work on a weekend to meet my quota. And the sad thing is, with this particular job, I was one of the ones that were more on top of their quota. Like, there are a lot of people that pulled a lot more hours than I did. So that to me was really sad. It's sad because, like, speaking to other people in the industry at the time, like working in other companies in the animation scene in Vancouver, it kind of sounded like this was the norm and this was just kind of what was expected. And I don't know, maybe it's just my privileged and entitled millennial mindset thinking out loud here, but there was just something so wrong about it. I just felt like we were being taken advantage of. So I worked, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, but that often meant more than 9 to 5, like 9 to 6, 9 to 7. And then sometimes it would spill over into the weekends. And because the work itself was so intensive, mentally, like, I would come home and I would be so tired that I barely had any time left for myself. I never wanted to cook a nutritious meal for myself at the end of the day because I was just so drained and I didn't have time or the energy to, do grocery shopping and plan out my meals. So I would often just resort to frozen pizza or frozen dumplings. That all just contributed to me burning out. And after a while, it finally dawned on me that this was completely unsustainable. It was so taxing that it left me with so little time at the end of the day for myself to even do anything else but to just relax and try to escape to get ready for the next day of work. I felt like a zombie, and I was just living and looking forward to those sweet weekends. And to me, that's really no way to live. I feel like if you don't have time at the end of the day to just reconnect with yourself and have time to actually form relationships with people, make friends and maintain friendships and have a relationship with yourself, treat yourself well with nutritious food and hobbies. If you don't have the time at the end of the day to do that, then what good is a job? Again, maybe that is just my entitled millennial mindset, thinking out loud here, but to me, that is no way to live. Actually, at the time, my body started to show signs of the amount of havoc that all this work was having on me. I started to have these weird physical manifestations of all that stress. I had this weird pressure problem with my ears for a number of weeks, which was honestly so scary, and it almost pushed me to the point of depression. Thankfully, it did resolve itself, but my goodness, all these weird, mysterious physical ailments that sprouted up during this time while I was working and very stressed out. I have no doubt that was due to feeling overworked and completely stressed and not having that time to myself at the end of the day to chill and take stock of life, So yeah, time, or maybe in other words, work-life balance. And I realized that if I don't have work-life balance, then that job is not sustainable in the long run. So the next big reason why I decided to leave the animation industry is because I realized very early on that the ceiling is quite low when it comes to the amount of money that I could make. And maybe this is just, again, my limited experience talking here, but at least with the job that I had being a layout artist, I realized that there's really no way up for me from here if I want to still be an artist and actually do art, unless I decided to take on more non-art related responsibilities. Then I kind of tapped out where I was at the time. I actually did manage to get a promotion 3 months into my employment, and I became a lead posing artist or a lead layout artist. And with that, I did get a salary increase from $850 a week to 1,000 Canadian a week. And at the time, I was pretty content with it. But after having worked at this job for over a year, I decided to ask for a raise. And surprise, surprise, I did not get one. And I thought, that doesn't seem right. Even though I did get a raise when I got promoted, it didn't seem right to me that they were not adjusting for inflation by giving you a yearly increase on your salary. It didn't seem right to me, but whatever, I just lived with it. Again, I was at this time just clocking in, clocking out. I was a walking zombie. I didn't have any time to consider my future or anything like that. I was just going in and out, getting that paycheck. But when the 2-year mark rolled around and I actually asked for another salary increase, because come on, it's been 2 years, I didn't get one. And that really, really rubbed me the wrong way. So you know what? I actually did end up leaving that job for another job that paid 30% more for the same job description, the same kind of work, but actually it ended up being easier than the old job, and therefore it allowed me to have more time to myself. And because I was working from home at this time, I got to control my own hours. And so basically I ended up trading up in every which way, which was a huge blessing at the time. Now, before you say anything, I'm aware that there are other jobs in animation that pay significantly more. For example, I know that storyboard artists get paid pretty well from what I hear, and their upward mobility is just a lot better. But storyboarding is pretty niche, and that's not what I wanted to do, and that's not something I ever considered doing. So I am aware that there are higher paying jobs within the animation industry. However, I still feel like the ceiling is pretty low, at least from what I could see in the animation scene in Vancouver. And so to me, again, it just came down to being completely unsustainable. And the future didn't look very bright. You want to know as an employee, if you're spending so much time working there, then you have some room to grow and you have some upward mobility in that company. But when you know that ceiling is very low, it's really sad, I think, to not have anything to work towards and have anything to look forward to, and to know that that's the best that they can give you. Not to mention that there is almost no job security when it comes to animation. Basically, when your project comes to an end, you have to go and find new work, another project to jump onto. and there may be, you know, those like two productions may not line up perfectly one after another. Like there may be a gap in between, and you might be without work for several months. And this might mean you have to even change studios, go through another like probation period, and in order to get approved for a what's called like a benefits package and all that stuff. So it's a lot of instability, I find, for the people working in animation. And I don't know, like looking around, people just seemed like okay with it, but for me, I guess I'm just someone who wants more security when it comes to my future. I want to know that when I am working really hard, that I'm working towards a bigger goal. Even though at the time the money I was making was all right, you know, I didn't really have much of a complaint. I feel like a lot of these animation jobs, the money that you can make from them, they don't allow you to build a future with that money. Like, it's just enough to cover for rent and food, and really not much more than that. I feel like it's not enough to provide you with a certain amount of funds put away for emergencies or savings, or, you know, putting money away for your retirement. At least from my experience, having worked at the same company for 2 years and asking for a raise to at least cover for inflation at the time, like, and not getting it. I don't know. I don't think it's entitled of me to want that for myself, you know, to want to make more money so that I'm not just getting by, so that I'm not just covering my rent for the next few months. I guess in an ideal world, for me, my hope for everyone is that they find a job or they create a job for themselves where they get to utilize their own special set of skills, because I believe everyone has their own special talent and set of skills that they can offer to the world, and they can actually plan and build a future with that money. I don't think that is too much to ask for, personally. I asked for that from my employers and I didn't get it. And that's when I decided that, you know, if I'm not going to find this from an employer, I have to give it to myself. So yeah, all of the points that I discussed in this video today, you know, time, money, and not feeling like I was getting closer to my goal in life of becoming the artist that I wanted to be. Those are all reasons why I ultimately made the decision to go independent. So I think that's where I will wrap up today's video. And again, just a reminder that the Kickstarter is going live this Saturday, June 5th. Don't miss it. I hope to see you guys there. Thank you all so much again, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!